Do, 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 do. Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, a business podcast about revenue-generating partnerships, not a podcast about business time with friends. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends.
Welcome back to the show, friends. The first of its kind. We are in the studio together today. The studio meaning our office and my desk. If you're watching my video, you will see that we are also just sitting really close to one another. Welcome to the show, babe.
This is such an official studio.
Yeah, we are. The sound is good. The lighting is fantastic.
We've made it. We're sharing a mic.
We haven't quite figured out the in-home studio thing yet. Limited space, especially with kids. But, right now we're recording together at my desk because we're interviewing you today.
I know. I'm a little nervous about this one, to be honest. It's a lot easier to pepper people with questions than answer them yourselves.
Especially in person. We're treated like a first date.
Okay.
Thought about making this one a short one and just calling it a quickie, but may not work for a lot of folks listening.
That's still in brand for approval at this point.
Yeah, it may not get a lot of people able to come on the show of using terminology like that, but anyway, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here, friends.
We're going to interview Sam today. If you haven't figured that out yet, Sam has been in partnerships for a while now, building some really great programs at a little company called PFL, which I know quite well. But you've got an interesting background, much like myself, that have led you to partnerships. I think we'll have a really good conversation around that. So you're typically the one asking this question, and you're the one who conceptualized the podcast. But what does the term friends with benefits mean to you?
Okay, this is my show, and I was not prepped for that question. Friends with benefits means showing up day in and day out for people. And it's the law of reciprocity. It will return to you in ways that you don't know. And I think that's true from a personal perspective. And I know that's true from a business perspective. So,
yeah, we don't get a chance to dig into this question too much because we often find ourselves just moving right on to the next question. But I like the aspect of showing up. I feel like we've heard another guest use something similar, but I think the benefit of what we do in partnerships is like just showing up and being there to help one another and helping everyone in the work they're doing. I just got back from Catalyst. You unfortunately couldn't attend, but the thing I heard from most people that were there, especially those that were new to partnerships, was how great the partnership community is. Like they're always there to help. They're always there to introduce, lend a hand or whatever, because that's literally what we do. We facilitate connections.
No doubt. I loved what Sangram said on our show the other week too, about how that is what partnership people do. We build community. We are connecting people always. And there's not always an immediate, like, what's in this for me? But man, you've seen it. I've seen it. We've all seen it. You go out of your way to help people and it just comes back to you in ways you couldn't have imagined.
Yeah. And that's really, like I said, our job is to make sure everyone within our company is happy and everyone that, touches our company is happy. And I also like that you're really good at recalling these episodes because I do a terrible job of this. Like you just pulled that Sangram thing out of your hat and I don't remember those at all.
The difference between a female and a male brain.
It's true. I have to go back and listen to the podcast. I actually know what we actually talked about. I feel like Will Ferrell in old school, like I blacked out. What happened? So let's jump right into it. You've been, how long have you been doing this now? 3 years? 4 years?
3 years next month.
Oh, look at that. And we've been married for 6 years next month. So happy anniversaries.
Thank you. You too.
What a special episode. Maybe by the time won't air quite on our anniversary, but getting close. So 3 years, you came into the partnership world fresh, new, innocent, didn't know what was really happening in the space, and you figured out pretty quickly. And you built a great program as coming in, not having a partnership background. What do you remember about getting started and kind of figuring this whole landscape of partnerships out?
It's funny to recall this because for those of you that don't know the story, Jason had my job before I did.
Yeah, this is a made-for-TV story here. Bravo should pick up the rights.
Yeah, someone should produce this. It's not going to be us. But it's so interesting because I remember you would come home from work. This was back in the days when we would physically, you'd walk out the door with your briefcase. Bye, honey. See you after work.
I take a bag lunch every day. True story.
You didn't do that. But you would explain to me what you did, and I had no idea. It did not make sense. And then I got this job, and I still didn't really even know what partnerships meant. So it was
just thought I went to a lot of conferences. Literally thought I got paid to make friends.
Not even though, like, I don't know. It didn't click. It was so confusing. And I think there's so many things to unpack here because, like, I didn't understand, and it took me a long time to talk to a bunch of people to really, like, make ends meet, to have those synapses connect. And I think there's so much to unpack because it's like we enable the heck out of our teams. We talk internally, externally. Here's what partnerships is. And if it takes somebody that long who has a spouse in the field or who actually is doing the work to, like, wait, we do what to make what happen? Then how can we expect our internal and external teams to, like, attend a lunch and learn and get it?
Yeah, fair point. Especially to that making your teams understand it. And I promise I did as good of a job as I could to explain it while I was doing the job. You know what's different now in partnerships versus when you started? I mean, there's to see almost 600 people in a convention center last week talking partnerships was amazing. So, like, your experience starting 3 years ago to now, like, what's different in our space?
Man, you're just, like, rubbing it in my face. I have so much FOMO for not being there last week. I'm just home raising our children. But
Burn.
Just kidding.
I'll just gallivanting.
I also had a board meeting, so I had to be there for that. What has changed? I think so much has changed. One, there's more recognition for it on the executive level. Like, there's more conversation about partnerships in many rooms, it's not on an island so much as it was. I think we still have a lot of work to go, but it's definitely becoming something that's a must-have rather than a nice-to-have.
Yeah, it's the adoption across the board.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's interesting because I think we had decent adoption when I was at PFL. I had roughly, I don't remember the count, it was over 40 SI, ISV partners that I was managing, working with, along with Marketo and eventually Salesforce. And what you're doing is, I would consider you've leveled up to levels we never could have reached, and you're doing it with just Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with, like, why just Salesforce versus the others that we had rolling? It's like you're building something really special and noteworthy within Salesforce. So let's start with why you started there.
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about this a lot on the show, but relational currency and how that's not transferable. So there was a lot of things that played into this. So again, we name these names all the time, but they are worthy every time. Yeva Roberts built this Salesforce partnership from the ground up, and her name still comes up. So she
mentioned her name today to somebody.
Did a phenomenal job of kind of creating these grassroots foundational experience for PFL in the Salesforce ecosystem. So that needs to be said. Then came, Marnie Reed. She was the reason PFL has a partnership program. So she, did a ton of work in building the team and in managing you and Andy Cochran and Yeva. So that was kind of the foundation. And there was a lot going on there in terms of, like you just mentioned, you built SIs and agencies. Yeva did Salesforce. Andy was involved in Salesforce too. I never crossed paths with any of them other than Marnie. So when I came in, Marnie was a team of one, trying to just keep everything afloat, essentially. And then she left. And so it was me. And, picking up where you guys left off, is not just like a handoff of the baton. And I think that's something that we've touched on, but needs to be expanded upon, because when you just like hand off a relationship, it doesn't just work. You need to like build those connections and make sure that you know these people on the other side of the company. Again, I always say this, but it's not PFL having a partnership with Salesforce. It's Sam and Alex and Kurt and Peyton building those one-on-one relationships with people who have Salesforce as their job title. And that's where you really move mountains and make rubber meet the road. So there's a little bit of the backstory. Now, why did we go all in on Salesforce? Well, when I got here, we were building a platform and we had no resources to build additional integrations. That's just the fact, the truth of it. And so we kind of had to look at what do we have working for us and where can we go make the biggest impact with the team that we have. And we looked at Salesforce. They were the ones that were definitely giving us like the most leads, but it was pretty reactive in that moment. So we tried to think about how can we make this repetitive, predictable, and build a machine, a flywheel, as we've said here before, out of Salesforce. And so that's why we picked Salesforce. That's why we leaned in completely. And man, it's been 2.5 years now, and I've learned a ton. And we've made a ton of impact with Salesforce. 100% of our deals closed this quarter. Sorry, we're partner sourced.
That's incredible.
All by Salesforce, but we're just scratching the surface. I think that's the thing with, it's not a one and done. Like, we are just scratching the surface.
I mean, especially if you're focused on building one-on-one relationships, you've got work for days and years within a company like Salesforce. So let's take a couple of steps back. I was thinking about, like, as you're digging into Salesforce, like, what is it that PFL does for context for those listeners at home?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good place to start. PFL automates direct mail within marketing automation platforms or CRMs. So,
is it helpful that you guys are PFL's native to Salesforce? Essentially, requires that kind of connection, that triggering, to be able to create those direct mail sends.
100%, yes. And I think that's one thing. Like, if you are looking to start a partnership with Salesforce, you need to be on the App Exchange. Point blank. You need to pay to play. I mean, lots of people.
That's a good point.
Yeah, lots of people ask, like, how do you get started? Well, first of all, you have to have internal buy-in across your org to get into the App Exchange, do all of this security review, all of that, make sure your app is native. And that's how you're going to get Salesforce's attention first and foremost. If you're not willing to make those steps and do the whole rev share agreement, whatnot, then you're not going to get the support of Salesforce, and it's going to be a very uphill battle for you. So internal buy-in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the aspect of, paying to play, how have you been successful at getting and maintaining that internal buy-in when you have to pay out a rev share of, like, what is it, 15% these days?
15%. Yep. And again, this goes back to Marnie. She set this up. That's a marketing spend. So we just look at that as comes out of marketing P&L. But that's not just it. I mean, us as a partner team have a budget outside of that too. So we have a budget to go enable, to go provide experiences for the Salesforce team, like building these relationships. We've all been there. You just went to a conference. That's the game. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to be able to bring these people to dinner, to go on site and enable them. That's all part of the pay to play too. That's super important to not overlook.
Yeah, no doubt. I think budgeting to expand that partnership is another crucial step to it, which we can probably spend an entire podcast just talking about that. More so, I want to kind of start digging into, like, really nailing that partnership. So outside of the pay to play, having a budget to do all the things, you mentioned, building those one-on-one relationships. Let's expand on that a little bit, because we get a lot of questions, I think, around, like, how do you partner with Salesforce? Like, how do you really nail it? And there's a lot of people that do the rev share, but not a lot of people that are really nailing it. And you won't say it, so I'll say it to the listeners, like, you built a program that even Salesforce is looking at. They're trying to figure out like how you've done what you've done, and there's other companies out there who have replicated your model. So like let's dig into like how you're really nailing that ecosystem and building effective relationships, building process and everything around it.
Well, thank you for saying that. Before we dive on, one thing too, if you're having a hard time convincing your internal teams on the rev share, one thing I'd encourage people to look at is CAC. So cost per acquisition for customers. Yeah, so you look at 15%. Say you sell a $100,000 deal, 15%, $15,000. Your upper management might look at that and be like, that's insane. But let's put it this way. If you have nurtured these relationships and you source that deal and 15% is all you're paying from a CAC perspective, yes, you have to think about your salary and all that. But $15,000 is probably not that high considering all of the marketing programs and everything else that might go into acquiring that customer elsewhere. So just if you're having a hard time with rev share, look at CAC. That might be a good place to start.
It's a great point. Excellent point.
So to go back to your point about how to really get started and make an impact with Salesforce, start small to go big. And it sounds so overwhelming and daunting. Like in full transparency, when Marnie left, I was like, oh God, that means I have to take over Salesforce. Ugh. I was like,
it's a huge, I mean, obviously it's a huge company, but it's like when you start to partner, it gets really big. And so to take the inverse of what you just said is like, how do you make the big feel small?
yeah,
Right. So I think there's a lot of intimidation factor to working with them as well.
100%. And I had it for sure. And I think you look at Salesforce and you're like, oh my God, it's Salesforce. First of all, how do I even make an impact there? But like the people at Salesforce, how do I get to know them? Like they're at Salesforce, you know? Well, the thing is, it's people doing business with people, and we say that, and it sounds trite, but that is the truth of it.
100%.
So it's making individual connections and knowing your ICP too. I think that's the other really crucial part. So, we can dive into this, but because of this partner program at PFL, we have kind of shifted our ICP to meet the individuals and the impact that we were having with Salesforce. So
So you guys shifted the entire ICP to align closer to the Salesforce partnership.
yes, correct. So let me dive into that a little bit. So a year and a half ago, I got a random email from somebody at Salesforce, and I thought it was just an AE. So prior to this, I was having conversations with AEs, learning about their book of business, asking them, who's in your book of business? How can I help you grow more ACV? How can I help you create a larger Salesforce footprint by offering PFL as an integration? That was the play. And then once I got an in, then it's asking networks there of like, okay, AE, who else is on your team? Can you offer me an introduction so I can help them win business? Who is your RVP? Can I do a team enablement? Like, don't forget to ask for the referral if you're working the cloud systems, because that is the way you're going to navigate the system.
So instead of asking for intros to customers, you're asking for intros to their team members.
Well, both. I'm asking for both.
We'll get to that part later.
Yeah. So, but I got this email from somebody, and I thought it was an AE. I took the meeting, and her name was Lorraine. She's no longer at Salesforce, but she was a game changer for me. So she was looking for marketing cloud applications in healthcare. And I didn't even understand this at the time, but that was going to be huge. So what that did was open up the doors for me into healthcare. So many things happened as a result of this. A, it helped us niche. So there's another piece, another nugget that I wish somebody would have told me. If you are a horizontal partner in Salesforce, niche down. Because if you go to Salesforce and say, hey, Salesforce, at PFL, we do direct mail. They're like, cool. I have no idea what that means. But
It is a horizontal partner at Salesforce.
okay, horizontal means we have no target vertical or industry. We serve every industry that Salesforce serves, which in theory should be good. But because our message was not specific enough, Salesforce AEs didn't know what to do with it.
Got it. Okay. Continue.
Okay, so we went into healthcare, and I went to a healthcare conference, was like, how hard can it be? It can be really hard. I know nothing about healthcare.
I didn't get good on that path for a reason.
Yeah. So we learned so much about kind of what those customers need, what their language is, what they're talking about, what their use cases are. And here's the thing. The use cases, if you look 30,000 foot, are not that much different, but the way they're talking about them and the outcomes they have for their customers, i.e. patients, is very different. So just learning that nomenclature and being able to speak the speak is really, really crucial. And then you take that and you put it over financial services or manufacturing. It's all the same use case, but different language, different names, and being able to articulate that it's a game changer.
Oh, yeah, I like that. So really finding the motivators and drivers behind what these AEs are looking for and how to speak to how they speak, right? It's just like when you have to learn to talk to, when we were dating, I have to be comfortable talking to the person I am trying to court or get with, so to say, and speak, a language that is representative of both of us so that we are attracted to one another and understanding what's motivating those AEs in a business context.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to the benefits of friendships is like how are we providing value to them to get them to entertain my crazy ask.
100%. Yep.
Okay, so getting to the heart of the podcast, how do you find that effective and efficient ways of building relationships with this team? So you mentioned the one-on-one relationships, asking for referrals internally. I know there's other things that you guys do, so I'd love for people at home to hear kind of you guys' process and building these purpose-built relationships.
Yeah, so I have to say my team is phenomenal. We have Alex Dayton, who owns the Salesforce relationship. Really, he's in there day in, day out. He's phenomenal. He's not for hire. He came over to the partner team from the BDR team, and he was choosing between AE partner. I brought him over to the dark side.
The way I thought it was the light side.
It depends on how you look at it. We have fewer resources, but he's been a game changer, and so that's one thing I think about often. I'm like, man, I wish I at one point in my career could have been a BDR, because the skills, the drive, the hunger he has is so crucial, and he just shows up day in, day out. But he's shifted a little bit too, because it's not just like hit my number now. He has started to see like these are relationships that I'm building. And because he's trained as a BDR, he has a very good hunger for like, okay, now that I have this relationship, how do I make sure we get the most out of it? Not only from a personal perspective, but from a business perspective. So he's king at asking for referrals and networking through the system. Like truly, if you go on LinkedIn and you find a Salesforce contact, there is a high likelihood that Alex is connected to them, and he's done a phenomenal job at that.
So what is he tasked with on a daily, weekly basis within Salesforce, and what is he metriced on?
Yeah, so that's been a learning process for us. When we started this, that was a new role. So really, how this came to be, and I'm going to mention Kurt and Peyton here really quickly so I can talk about the team at large. So Kurt and Peyton are marketing only. So we have 2 marketers, and then we have myself and Alex. That's the partner team.
4 people for those counts.
Yes. So when we brought Alex's role into the fold, it was brand new. We never had somebody whose sole job was to go network with Salesforce. I guess that was Yeva's job, but I was starting from scratch because I never overlapped there. So at first we were like, let's do meetings booked and customer intros.
Meetings booked with Salesforce employees.
Yes. Thank you for the clarification. And then customer intros from said employees. So sourced deals. That was a great place to start because it really got boots on the ground and got him meeting as many people as possible. That was the carrot of like, get this many meetings a month. And he got paid on a per meeting basis and then a customer intro basis. what we learned from that is it didn't necessarily align with the greater good of the company, which is pipeline. And also, he got to the point where he was meeting great people, but because his metric was new meetings, he wasn't able to go back and nurture the relationships that he just built.
Got it.
So we took a hard look and said, okay, let's relook at this. And now it's pipeline. And that's for the greater good for everybody. It's good for the company because we want to drive pipeline. It's good for Salesforce AEs because their deals are now in pipe, and that's how they get paid. They have to be closed won, of course, but everybody's now aligning more towards a true north.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good crawl, walk, run approach, right? As you set up someone new in partner account management, like how many people can you set meetings with within your partners? How many people can you meet and connect with and build relationships with? Because you can't really effectively build pipeline without those relationships, without those connections, without having people actually know who you are, what you're doing, what your company does and brings value to. So I like that as a beginning stage of getting people into partnerships.
No doubt. And I have to give him credit too, because he would book meetings with people and I'd be like, you got a meeting with what? And they were like high up people in Salesforce. And that goes to show how great he is. But he was like, yeah, but I have no idea what to talk to them about. And I was like, I'll join that one.
That's awesome. I like that. That's a really good model and good approach. And now you've kind of operationalized the program, the relationships. Like, give us a quick synopsis on what you're doing there from an operational standpoint.
Yes. So this is where marketing comes in. So we have all these relationships that Alex and myself are building, and we're tracking them in Salesforce. But how can we, this is where it goes from one-to-one to one-to-many. This is how you can scale. Alex and I can only have so many conversations in the day, as you would imagine. But because we're tracking these people in our Salesforce system, we now know, I think we've created 350 Salesforce relationships this year, meaning we've built relationships with 350 Salesforce employees. That could be solution engineers, industry leaders, AEs, you name it. We have them segmented in our Salesforce based on engagement. So whether or not they're new to us, they barely know who we are, or they're pretty mature and they've given us a lot of customer intros. We've also recently started to segment by industry. So they work in healthcare or manufacturing. And now with that data, we can market to them appropriately. And that's where Kurt and Peyton come in. So we're surfacing win stories, given the industry that they're in, or even like events we're going to, given their location. So we really are looking at Salesforce itself, the partner team, as our customer. So all the tools that your marketing team is doing, how can we basically pull that back and put it towards your partners?
Yeah. And I don't know if this is proprietary information or not, but you have an entire Salesforce instance dedicated to your Salesforce partnership.
Yeah.
Very, very meta. If you can kind of tell us what you're doing there, just in a quick highlight, I think that'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of touched on it, but when we meet somebody at Salesforce, we want to track that because, as you can imagine, 350 people, it's really hard to keep track of that on sticky notes or in your brain. So we create a partner relationship in Salesforce, and now we have track of which accounts they own, again, which industry they're in, when we met them. You can take notes just like an AE or a BDR would on an account. And so now we can go back and we can be like, okay, I haven't talked to Jason in a while. Let me look at what accounts he owns, what our last touch was. So we really can create kind of these personal relationships and keep track of that kind of stuff, because otherwise it's not scalable and you do lose track of all of it.
No, for those listening, like the process she's built, if you haven't seen it, book some time because it's very impressive, especially considering the fact that you can't use a Reveal or a Crossbeam to map with Salesforce. Funny story, I met Salesforce at Catalyst last week and got down the path of data sharing, account mapping solutions. They just laughed at me and they're like, yeah, sorry about that.
I have yet to hear about that conversation.
That was all. They just kind of laughed and just, yeah, sorry about that. And it was one of those things I knew instantly what they were talking about. Data sharing with Salesforce, Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, it's an incredible process. I really like the CRM instance you've got built out and how you've come in and strategically thought about the partnerships. And I think that's always, since I've known you, your strength is kind of strategy, and you think differently than most people, which is kind of what I love, working alongside of you and playing alongside of you, which kind of leads into the next topic, your other partnerships with me.
Oh, yes.
We've, in about, 10 days, we would have been married for 6 years.
This is true.
So let's talk about our work-life partnership. We hear it all the time, even most recently from our next-door neighbors. Hi, Cara. I know you're listening. About how we actually kind of work together and live life together. For those who don't know, Sam works 3 feet behind me at her desk.
My commute for the podcast was long.
We do the podcast. We essentially do everything together. And
Parent.
We have 2 kids, Jack and Nora, 4 and 2. Just got back from Yellowstone, by the way. Took Jack and Nora out for their first trip to the Yellowstone National Park. That was awesome. Got a video coming on that soon.
Very fun. Highly recommend.
Yeah, it was great. So let's talk a little bit about how we manage that. And apparently it's not a very common thing for spouses to work in the same room and do all the same stuff together all the time.
Yeah.
How do you manage this partnership?
Well, I think it's a joint management, and I think that's key.
There's a great joint value prop in it.
Yes. I think the biggest thing is you show up day in and day out.
Yeah.
Let's start back at my friends with benefits definition. Communication is so key, and you've always been pretty good at that, at least since I've known you. I think you did some prep work to get there. You've helped me with that.
I think you've got to be open to yourself to allow others to be open to who you are, right? And if you're kind of both open to one another, then like the relationship is just it's kind of next level, right? And what I mean by that is like the more self-respect you have, I think the more respect others have for you, and once you both find that common ground of respect for one another, then like being together all the time isn't that big of a deal because you kind of understand and get each other.
Yeah, and I think if you know what you need or I know what I need, then we're able to articulate that better for each other.
Yes. Which
makes for a good experience. And so we've been married 6 years, we've been together 8 years, and that's definitely been a learning process. I used to be a very passive-aggressive person who wouldn't ask for help. So
it's still not a strength of yours. Well,
I've gotten better. If you see me forcefully shutting cabinets or putting dishes away very forcefully,
like we've got the airsoft cabinets,
you know that something's wrong, and I am not doing a good job articulating that. So we've gotten better about it. But I think, it's especially working in the same industry, which means there's a lot of overlap in terms of like conferences we need to go to or people we talk to. So we really, truly, we really do consider this our group of friends because this is where we live and breathe. But from a personal perspective, I think it's definitely a give and take. Like you went to Catalysts last week, which I joke. It's like, yeah, I have FOMO. I do, but that's fine. Like that, it made sense for you to go to that conference. Salesforce is my people.
Right.
That was not Salesforce's conference. You work at Reveal. That is a conference you need to be at. And so those are the types of things that we just need to like work through. And again, it's major communication. We have 2 small children. We can't just like pick up and leave and go to Denver for the week.
Right.
So how do we make sure that we're both succeeding and growing in our careers, but also in our marriage, most importantly in our marriage and our family?
Yeah. I think too, there's a level of selflessness that often just gets kind of overlooked. I think in any relationship, you have to be extraordinarily selfless.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do a really good job of really genuinely caring about each other's interest. I think I care more about your interests than sometimes I care about mine, and often feel that from you a lot of times. And I think that's what makes the at-home partnerships work, right? When you think less about yourself to really bring value and benefit to the other, to your partner, right? And I know you embody that with me, and I embody that with you, and that's what we're trying to teach our kids. Is about, I think we tell them every night that we're kind to everybody, and we love people because we're Yarboroughs, and that's what we do. And we're beginning to teach that to them, right? And I think there's a lot of that's overlooked in a lot of relationships because people are thinking about themselves. You mentioned some of the work I put in, like way back in the day. I realized that, I was just trying to look out for myself and getting, what I could out of life for myself. When in actuality, when I took a step back, like I was just trying to get something for me because like I didn't have internally what I already needed, which was self-worth and self-love. And like once I began to understand that and see that, like the whole world opened up, and I could really begin to see like I've got everything I need inside already. Like I love who I am. I've got self-value, self-worth, and I begin to see that I don't expect anything out of from other people, so I can give more of myself honestly and genuinely to others without expecting anything in return.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I met you shortly after going through that work, like genuinely curious and interested in who you were and didn't expect anything out of it. Obviously I wanted a girlfriend and, eventually a wife, fun, quick story, a good at-home relationship stories. I fell hard quick. Like I fell in love very fast. To the point that I think it was 39 days into our relationship, we were having dinner on your patio, and I was like, this is going to sound crazy, but I think I love you.
This is true, and I didn't respond.
I remember your response. It was like, wow, that was quick. I'm going to need some time to think about that. And I did not expect anything in return. I just had to let you know because I was falling very hard and still am to this day.
But I think there's something there, and that's the crux of all of it. It's intentionality and vulnerability. So not being afraid to hold things back, whether they're good or bad. And no one benefits from that. And I think you can bring that to your partnerships professionally too. Like if there's a problem, address it.
Yeah.
You don't have to like be aggressive about it, but like when you hold things back, or if there's a win, address it. I think that's the base of having a good relationship is just communication. And then the other part that we haven't talked about is intentionality, especially in our day-to-day life when we sit in the same office. And like you guys were insane. We literally like go pick the kids up together. There is no
we did drop off together
separation here, but I think it's because you have to pay attention to the little moments and be intentional about making them count. So in the morning, waking up and giving each other a hug, not just like waking up and going straight to your phone and straight to your day. Like your home is the most important relationship you can have. So it's paying attention, it's making eye contact, it's making those moments count, having dinner together, checking in on our day. Like seriously, I don't need to ask you how your day was. I was sitting right there for the whole time.
Yeah, you hear when I get animated or swear under my breath or on mute or whatever.
But it's checking in because the experience of your day that you had is very different than the day that I had, even though there were 3 feet apart. And if we can't connect on those moments, then you're at a loss.
That's good. I like that. There's a lot of value in checking in on each other's day, just checking in general. Even if we didn't work in the same room together, it's like I think that sets the tone for how things are going to go at home, how things are going to go in your relationship. We spend more time, I think, working than we do with our families. So like being able to check in and get an understanding and being vulnerable enough to tell how your day was or your day was like or about, like really can begin to set the tone for how things go in the house.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
And I think a lot of people just don't really care to talk about it. Had a shitty day, had a hard day, whatever. Just leave it there. Like, oh, let's talk about it. Let's be honest for a sec.
Yep.
How could we have made it better? Do you need somebody to talk to about it? Do you just want somebody to listen? What is it?
Yeah.
So you were mentioning intentionality and vulnerability and bringing it to people. For those that follow us on LinkedIn, they may have seen a slight tweak in some of our posts on LinkedIn. We're sharing a bit more getting a little bit more intentional with what we're sharing, trying to encourage others in different ways beyond just like how to 5x your partnership, how to grow 20% this quarter, but more around like, well, you share like where are you coming from with some of your new content around your gardening or your art or just you as a self?
Well, I have to give you credit for this, partially.
I'll take partial credit.
Okay. We were kind of in I wouldn't call it a rut, but we were in a program. We would wake up, we would go to work, we would no, it was just like, this is the way things are. And we weren't really being intentional about thinking about it. You know, it's like you wake up, you go to work, you have dinner with kids, you put them in bed, we watch a show, we go to bed, and then repeat on Groundhog's Day, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was fine. Nothing was, you know, but there was nothing invigorating about it either.
Right.
And so you started working out again, and you stopped drinking. And I was like, I don't get out of bed. And one thing I do want to focus on for a second here is like you found what worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a little bit of like self shame. I used to work out really hard. I used to lift weights 5 times a week and would run half marathons. And that was great for that time in life. And it's taken me a moment to be like, you know what? I'm a mom of 2 small kids. That is not the life for me right now.
Right.
I'm going to do yoga and I'm going to invest in meditation. And that is what works for me right now. And also it's amazing. And that's what I'm going to do. And so we've both kind of taken our own separate paths of like, all right, what does investing in our own personal selves look like so that we can be better for the whole being us, our family, you all as a community. So it's not only like stopping drinking and working out, but how can I like create more, the irony in what's happening right now. I'm trying to say more stimulation for my mind.
Right.
I know for myself, I'm a very creative person, and I've totally lost that since we had kids. And I also think there's something to be said for having grace with yourself. Our kids are 2 and 4, and I feel like we're just coming out of the like survival mode of that.
Probably getting to the point where they're playing together, they're having a good time. We get a little bit more mom and dad time, a little bit more individual time. Still not as much time as we used to have, but we're getting there.
But this goes back to our partnership too, of like, let's create that space for each of us to explore what a whole human looks like again.
Right.
And that means you can step away and go run on the weekend, and I'll take the kids, and vice versa. And we're all better for it.
I mean, it's being really intentional with your time, and part of it is having a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Is like, I want to be present and intentional with them. I don't want to be so busy or glued to a phone or hungover or whatever it might be that I can't really be present with those little babes who are just the best. So there's a level of intentionality that you have to begin to live life with to know like what's important and what's not. Like what experiences do we want to pursue, and what do we kind of, you know, what do we want to be known for amongst each other and amongst like our community that we're building.
Yeah. And Adrienne talked about this in her episode too, about setting those boundaries and guardrails. And I think that's something, when we were single, it didn't matter, but now it does. So you've gotten really good at having a morning routine, and you cherish that time. And I think that's something that as we go through life, you have to just reevaluate. So now it's like we work during work hours. Outside of that, we hang out with our kids. And in the mornings, you have your time. Like making sure you carve those out and you're really sticking to that, because no one's going to do it for you.
Right.
And then 5 years go by and you've stopped working out. You've lost touch with your creative self. You have nothing except for sitting down and watching Netflix every night and getting into a program like we found ourselves in.
How have you found yourself achieving different levels of this whole journey? Started with kind of a joke around peak performance, which actually became a whole mantra and thing. But how have you found yourself like different throughout your day at work, kids, with me, by, you know, being more intentional and pursuing this, you know, quote unquote peak performance mindset?
Well, for me, it's mindset. That's been the biggest thing. I recently, well, no, it has been a few months now, started meditating pretty frequently. And at first I was like, this is kind of crazy and woo woo and nuts. And it is still, but man, it's awesome. And I think taking the time to center yourself and understand that you truly do have control over the way that you perceive the world and that the world perceives you. Like, what power is that? And that's amazing. So waking up every day and choosing positivity, choosing opportunity, choosing abundance, and man, it changes the way the world works for you.
Yeah, I've obviously seen it firsthand how it's like changed our life, our conversations, our pursuits. Like we now have, a different level of, we call it drive to pursue things, beyond ourselves, bigger than our day jobs, and really trying to bring purpose and intention to our lives. And also how, going back to your comment, like how we show up for other people.
Yeah.
I love like where our conversations have gone recently, and like how we're trying to show up for others and really help others achieve their best selves, their whole selves, and whatever that may look like. I love, that for you, and you put a post up about this on LinkedIn, that it's, working in our garden, in our backyard, or painting, or finding your thing. I think, a lot of people haven't had the opportunity or desire to pursue their thing, but I think there's a lot of, you and I talked a lot about this, like a lot of purpose in experience. I'm reading a book right now by Stephen Kotler. He talks about experiences, gathering more and more experiences are what opens up our creativity, where these creative thoughts and things aren't put into you just, like you're plugged in. Creativity only happens by getting multiple experiences. So like you doing your art and gardening, and me doing my whatever things, like, the cruiser and fishing and playing outside, like those are experiences that I begin to gather that allow us to unleash our creativity and begin to find our things.
I think the other thing too that I'm really learning is you have this vision for your future, and sometimes it can seem so like far or distant or unattainable even, and the path to get there is not clear.
Not at all. There's no playbook for it, really.
Yeah, there's no playbook for any of it. The only playbook is to do the next best thing, as Glennon Doyle said.
Yeah.
And that's going to naturally carve out your way forward. Whereas if you just sit in and you're paralyzed by what to do next, nothing is going to happen for you. But if you take the next step, you're going to learn. And that might not be the way you want to go, but at least you took a step, and it's going to show you the next one. And that is the way forward. And so whether it's, the other thing too, I'm learning a lot is I've always been, I don't have time. I have 2 small kids. I have a full job. I have this, I have that. There is always time.
Right.
It's just how you choose to spend it. And that also goes back to your partnership too. We are very privileged. We have a wonderful relationship. We have great jobs. But it's being really intentional about, I'm going to pick up painting again, and that means I'm going to need your help a little bit more.
Yeah.
Or whatever that is. So it's just getting started and not trying to get to the finish line before you take the first step.
No, that's great. And that's something that you're really great about encouraging me. Because as you know, I get very much, analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Where I just overthink and I just don't start.
Yeah.
I've been talking about this podcast for a very long time. So this is one of those things like, let's just start.
Yep.
And I think, it was you that was kind of pushing and driving, like, let's just start. And you're great at that. And as with me, like I got to have it all put together. I got to understand it. Got to see the big picture. I got to have the domain, the website, the stuff, this, that, and the other thing. But, this has been...
Props to us. We still don't have a domain.
Exactly. We don't have we got a landing page on Partner Hacker, but...
Yeah. Well, thanks to the Partner Hacker team. Like, truly, that's
about it. So we just got started and started putting this together. Thankfully, you have a graphic design background, put together our artwork.
It's true.
All that fun stuff. I did some of the intro music. You provide the other half of it. Yeah, for those of you who have not figured that out yet, we are the intro music, by the way. Do, 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 do. See? So we just got started. We didn't have intro music. We wanted intro music, so we made it.
And it works just fine.
People love it. I think we were at Catalyst last week, and Mike Stocker walked up and he was humming the tune. It's like,
yes, Mike. God, I love that guy.
It's picking up out there. Yeah, if they don't love the podcast, they love the intro music. We'll at least have that for us. All right, so should we wrap this thing up?
We should. People are probably getting bored of listening to us.
Yeah, these guys make it.
If you listened this long and you want to talk more, clearly we're passionate about this. So
yeah,
let us know.
We can talk partnership for days, but we'd much rather talk about you, understand you, and how we can help. I think you and I spend as much time helping others understand partnerships and their work, and also the work to put into to be the best self. I for whatever reason find myself in a lot of those talks, and that's the intention that I set out to. That's kind of your mindset or your manifestation aspect of things. Like when I help people, so you find ways that, or I guess it finds ways to work itself into its conversations with me, is like that always naturally comes up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you want to talk to us, if you want to talk, if there's things that you want to be doing and pursuing outside of your daily work, just start doing it. Just start, finding ways to bring that up in conversation, and it'll find its way to you. I promise. All right. So let's wrap it up with some questions. I think this is a good opportunity for me to do some research.
Boy.
Your favorite. Okay, two questions. Your favorite type of date night?
Experiences. So meaning not just like your traditional dinner and whatever, but something out of the blue. We did this last summer and I loved it. We would alternate date nights, and every other one you would be in charge of and I would be in charge of. And we did some fun ones. We did line dancing, axe throwing, fly fishing.
We went to the Montana Science Center and
we 3D printed.
3D print, that's right.
That was fun. Yeah.
So our date nights are also nerdy, but fun. We love it. I kind of knew the answer to that question, so not much research.
I hope you know the answer to all these questions. Otherwise, we're going real deep here.
This one made, I don't know. What's your most memorable date night? Can you recall one over the last 8 years?
Yeah, our first date. No, I mean, seriously. You took me to a nice dinner, and I mean, this sounds so cheesy, but it's true. Like, I think both of us in that moment were like, oh shit, this might be the real deal.
Yeah.
But he took me to a fancy dinner, and then I said, let's blow this joint and go to a dive bar. So I took you to Smokey Joe's in Charlotte.
I think it's one of those dive bars in deep North Carolina that you could actually maybe smoke in. I can't remember.
Oh, 100%.
That was. I almost told you I loved you the very first night after taking me that dive bar, because that's at my jam. Drinking PBRs and playing pool. But fantastic evening. Yes. So, well, as always, this is fun.
Thanks, friends. Hopefully we didn't bore you. There will be more guests coming, but we appreciate you all immensely. You are our community, so thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Do, 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 do.